My parents were supposed to stay with me for 2 months. Months later, I was sleeping on my own couch and wondering how you legally remove people who raised you. That sounds dramatic now. At the time, I kept telling myself it was temporary. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm 31, I work remotely as a data analyst, and about 2 years ago, I did the one thing I'd been working towards since I was 24. I bought my own place. Not a big deal to some people, a huge deal to me. It took 6 years. 6 years of renting apartments where I couldn't hang a picture without written permission. 6 years of watching my landlords raise the rent every 12 months like clockwork. 6 years of a spreadsheet I updated every single Sunday. Income, expenses, savings rate, target date. I know that sounds obsessive, maybe it is. But I'm the kind of person who needs to see the numbers to believe they're real. So I tracked everything. Every coffee, every grocery run, every subscription I canceled to shave another $40 off the monthly burn. When I finally hit the down payment and closed on the apartment, I printed the deed and put it in a folder. I still have that folder. The place itself is nothing special. 2 bedrooms, 7th floor, a view of the parking structure across the street. But it was mine, completely mine. I set up my desk in the 2nd bedroom, got a decent chair, positioned everything exactly where I needed it. I work 8 to 5, sometimes later, and the silence of that apartment was the best thing I'd ever paid for. My parents live about 4 hours away in the town where I grew up. We talked every Sunday, same time, same duration, about 30 minutes. Comfortable, predictable. My dad had been at the same manufacturing company for 19 years. My mom hadn't worked since I was in middle school. Their life seemed stable, quiet. I didn't ask too many questions, and they didn't volunteer too many answers. In February, somewhere around the middle of the month, my mom mentioned on one of our Sunday calls that my dad's company had been going through some changes. She said it the way people say things they don't want to say directly, quickly between 2 other sentences, like if she kept talking fast enough, I wouldn't catch it. I asked if everything was okay. She said yes, just some restructuring, nothing to worry about. I remember closing my laptop after that call and thinking, I should ask more next week. I didn't. That was the last quiet Sunday we ever had. The call came on a Thursday, not Sunday. That was the first sign something was actually wrong. My dad had been laid off, 19 years at the same company, and they walked him out with 2 weeks of severance and a cardboard box. My mom explained it in that same fast-talking way. Restructuring, budget cuts, nothing personal. My dad didn't say much. I could hear him in the background, and the silence from his direction was louder than anything my mom said. They were renting at $1,450 a month. Without his income, they had maybe 6 weeks before it became a real problem. My mom asked if they could stay with me, just for a couple of months until Dad found something new. I said yes because I wanted to. They were my parents. What kind of person says no to that? We agreed over the phone. Move in March 1st, leave by May 1st, 2 months. I gave them the 2nd bedroom and moved my desk to the living room corner. Not ideal, but manageable. They arrived on a Saturday with 4 carloads of stuff. I expected clothes and essentials. They brought furniture, a floor lamp, 3 boxes of kitchen items, my dad's massive brown recliner that swallowed a third of the living room. By the end of the first week, my mom had rearranged the kitchen cabinets. I came in one morning and stood there for a full minute trying to find my own mugs. It makes more sense this way, she said. You'll get used to it. Then on the 10th day, I came back from a grocery run and found my dad at my work desk, my monitors, my peripherals, watching YouTube at full volume. He hoped I didn't mind. His laptop screen was too small. I said it was fine. I always said it was fine. I put the groceries away and sat on the couch. A few days later, my mom mentioned they'd made copies of my keys. For convenience, she said. I had given them 1 set. They had made 2 more. May 1st came and went. Nobody said anything about it. I brought it up at dinner that Sunday. Carefully, no accusation in my voice. My mom set down her fork and looked at me like I'd said something deeply offensive. Your father hasn't found anything decent yet. We can't just move into something that doesn't work for us. Decent. Not anything. Decent. I asked what the timeline looked like. She said she didn't know. My dad said the market was tough. I nodded and finished my dinner. That was my pattern. Find the right tone. Avoid the explosion. Trust that it would resolve itself. In June, the guests started showing up. I came home one Friday to find 4 people from my parents' hometown at my dining table. My mom had cooked with groceries I'd bought for the week. One woman was in my chair with my laptop charger plugged into her phone. I said hello to everyone and went to my room. It happened 3 more times that month, always without warning. When I mentioned mentioned calmly the next morning that late guests made it hard to sleep before early meetings. My mom said, "We can't just stop living because of your schedule." Then I went to grab a backup monitor from the storage room and found everything rearranged. My boxes were in the corner. Their bags and coats filled the shelves. My mom said she'd thrown out some things that looked like junk. I asked what specifically. She waved her hand. "Old stuff, nothing important." I never found out exactly what was gone. That evening, I sat both of them down. Advance notice for guests. Storage stays shared. My work equipment is off limits. My dad listened, then said, "This isn't a hotel, we're family." My mom nodded. "You're treating us like strangers in your own home." They went to their room. I sat at the kitchen table looking at the cabinets she'd rearranged in March. I still hadn't moved the mugs back. In July, my electricity bill was $420. It had been $180 since I moved in. I printed both bills and put them on the kitchen table one evening after dinner. I didn't make it dramatic, just laid them side by side and said I needed us to figure out how to split the cost going forward. My mom looked at the papers, then at me. My dad didn't look at either. "We're not paying rent," my mom said. "You'd feel that difference." I said I wasn't asking for rent. I was asking for help with utilities that had more than doubled. She said they'd think about it. A week later, my dad slid an envelope across the counter without saying anything. $50 for a bill that had gone up by $240. I said thank you. I don't know why I said thank you. Then came the curtains. I came home one afternoon to find my living room curtains replaced. The ones I'd had were plain gray. I'd picked them specifically because they blocked light for early morning calls. The new ones were beige with a floral pattern along the bottom. My mom was already explaining before I could ask. The old ones were depressing. These were cheerful. She'd found them on sale. I asked why she hadn't mentioned it first. She said, "We paid for them. You should be grateful we're improving the place." 2 weeks later, the hallway wall was a different color. They'd painted it while I was on a work trip. Terracotta. I stood in my own hallway for a moment, just taking it in. When I brought it up, my dad said they'd put in the labor at least. My mom said, "After everything we've sacrificed for you over the years, you're upset about a wall?" There it was. Every conversation eventually arrived at the same place. My ingratitude measured against a debt I'd supposedly been accumulating since childhood. I stopped arguing. I opened my spreadsheet instead and started adding a new column. I called it Damages. August. I started spending evenings at a coffee shop 2 blocks away. I told myself it was for the noise-canceling headphones and the good Wi-Fi. That wasn't really it. I just needed somewhere that felt like mine for a few hours. I'd been seeing someone. Her name was Claire. We'd been dating about 3 months. She came over twice in July. The first time my mom was polite in that particular way that isn't actually polite. Too many questions, a comment about the food Claire brought being store-bought, a long look at her shoes when she came through the door. The second time, my mom made a remark at dinner about young women who don't know how to cook for a man. Claire laughed it off in the moment. I walked her to the door and she kissed me goodbye and said she'd text me. Her text got shorter after that. She stopped suggesting coming over sometime around the 3rd week of August. I didn't push. I didn't blame her either. One evening I typed up a list, printed it. 1 page, 12 points, quiet hours after 10, advance notice for guests, kitchen restocking, workspace off limits. I put it on the table before breakfast and sat down with both of them. My dad picked it up, read the first 3 lines, and set it back down without finishing. "This is a list for tenants," he said. "We're not tenants." My mom didn't touch the paper at all. She looked at me instead. "You've changed," she said. "Living alone changed you, and not for the better." I didn't answer. I folded the list and put it in my pocket. That afternoon I called a lawyer. Didn't mention it to anyone. I explained the situation and asked what my options were. She told me that without a written agreement, my parents were legally considered occupants. Removing them required a formal written notice, 30 days minimum. I asked if there were exceptions. There weren't. I thanked her and hung up. 30 days. I had the right. I just needed to decide if I was willing to use it. I wasn't. Not yet. September. I came home on a Tuesday evening and found my bedroom door closed. I could hear the television through it. I knocked. A woman's voice said, "Come in." I opened the door to find my mom's older sister, my Aunt Raya, sitting on my bed in a housecoat, watching a show on my TV, her suitcase open across my floor. She looked at me like I was the one who'd walked into the wrong room, like I'd interrupted something. My mom appeared in the doorway behind me. She explained that Raya had come in from out of town, just for a week, and since the second bedroom only had 1 bed, which my parents were using, this made the most sense. She said it fast, the way she always delivered things she knew I'd object to. I looked at my bed, at Raya's suitcase, at my nightstand with someone else's water glass on it. Then I went to the couch. I slept in my own living room for 4 nights. On the 5th morning, I told my mom quietly that this couldn't happen again. She said Raya was 63 years old and I was capable of handling a couch for a few days. My dad came in from the hallway and said, "You've become very focused on on yourself. We didn't raise you to be like this." I didn't respond. I made coffee and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. I pulled up the spreadsheet, the one I'd been quietly adding to since July. 7 months of utility bills averaging $390 above normal. The curtains, $140. The hallway paint job I never approved. The storage room, the backup monitor I never found. I added a new line for the 4 nights on the couch and typed 0 in the cost column because I didn't know how else to enter it. The total came to $4,260. I looked at that number for a long time. Then I opened a new browser tab and looked up the lawyer's number. I found it by accident. My mom had left a folder on the kitchen counter, the kind she used for recipes and coupons. I moved it to make room for my laptop and a few pages slid out. I almost pushed them back without looking, but one page had the word property printed in the header, and I stopped. It was a printout from a legal advice website. Someone had highlighted 2 sections in yellow marker. The first was about occupant rights after extended residence. The second was about parental claims to shared property after a prolonged period of cohabitation. In the margin, in my mom's handwriting, was a name and a phone number. A notary's office 2 miles from my apartment. I stood in the kitchen holding those pages for a long time. She hadn't done anything actionable. A printout isn't illegal filing, but she had looked it up. She had highlighted it. She had written down the number. That meant she had thought about it seriously enough to take notes. I put the pages back in the folder exactly as I found them and didn't say a word. That evening, I called the lawyer. Not to ask questions this time. I already knew the answers. I asked her to draft a formal notice of termination of occupancy, 30 days from the date of delivery, November 1st as the move-out date. She said she'd have it ready by end of week. The next morning, while my parents were out, I called a locksmith and asked how quickly he could rekey the locks once the move-out date had passed. I wasn't locking them out early. I just wanted everything ready for the day they left. That night, I wrote them a letter. 2 short paragraphs, no list of grievances, no mention of the spreadsheet, no mention of the notary printout. Just the date, the facts, and what happened next. I left it on the kitchen table and went to bed. It was the first night in months I didn't lie awake. The reaction came the next morning at breakfast. My mom read the letter twice. Then she looked at me and said I was throwing my own parents into the street. My dad said I'd become a stranger. My mom cried, real tears, not performed ones, which somehow made it harder. She said she didn't recognize me. She said she hadn't raised me to do something like this. She asked what she was supposed to tell people. I said I was sorry it had come to this. I said the date stood. Then the call started. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. My dad's brother, 2 cousins, a family friend who'd known me since I was 7. Each one had a version of the same speech. How could I do this? They're your parents. Family is everything. I didn't argue with any of them. I sent each one the same thing. My spreadsheet, a photo of the notary printout, and a short note explaining the timeline. I didn't ask for their verdict. I just made sure they had the full picture. The call stopped within a week. On November 1st, my parents left. I didn't stand in the hallway. I didn't help carry boxes. I stayed in my room until I heard the door close. Then I listened to the elevator. Then I listened to nothing. I moved my desk back to the second bedroom that afternoon, put the monitors where they belonged, found my spare cables in a box they'd pushed to the back of a closet. The mugs I moved back to the left of the sink where they'd always been. The November electricity bill was $175. About 6 weeks later, I heard through my cousin that my dad had found a job. Mid-level operations manager, decent salary, started in October. October, before they moved out. Maybe before they'd even finished telling people I was abandoning them. I sat with that for a few days, then added one last note to the spreadsheet and closed the file. My parents and I still don't speak. I don't know if that's permanent or just what this stretch of time looks like. What I do know is that peace doesn't feel like winning. It feels like hearing your own key in your own lock and knowing nobody on the other side thinks they own your life.